Hi everyone, it's Jen again. Today I am doing something a little bit different from the production of these videos ends. I am trying to record the audio separately to try and improve the quality a little bit from always having a bunch of fuzz in the background. So we'll see how this goes, but I apologize in advance if it's off-putting to anybody. This past couple weeks has pretty much just been me writing about 30,000 words for the story, so there's not a whole lot of exciting things to to pass on from that as far as my usual development video goes. But I thought this might be a good opportunity to talk a little bit about maybe subtopics regarding the writing process. Now, I am a by-your-pants kind of writer. I don't write a full script in advance. I write a loose outline of the general events that I plan on having take place in each individual chapter. And this is probably a carryover from when I used to work in comics and I was on a monthly chapter type schedule. I enjoy the writing process more if I kind of can spread it out and let it form organically, because as much as I think about these characters, I don't really get to know them until I start writing them, so they will evolve from the beginning to end. I guess it would make sense then to write the entire script so that I can get to know the character and then go back and all the other bells and whistles as far as polishing the plot and refining everything. And I think this is one of the reasons why I'm still kind of just a hobbyist is because I like to spread things out. I can only write for a certain amount of time every day where I start to lose focus. Probably an hour of writing is the most I can get done in one sitting, and then if I try to push myself past that 1 hour of writing, it tends to come out very slowly and kind of forced, and a lot of times I'll have to rewrite it. I might have mentioned this before in one of my other videos, but I have not really consciously thought about why I work the way I work until I started really having to manage my time with having a full-time job and having a lot of duties in the house, as far as taking care of my family goes. When I started to be confronted with this reality that I had to be very intentional with my time, I realized that I could be just as productive as I was when I was working on these things in college and school, when I had what in hindsight feels like all the time in the world, right? I mean, I certainly didn't feel that way at the time, but anyways, back then I could kind of work with a little bit less of a strategy, because everything, I could just kind of push myself. And so if I wasn't working efficiently, it was okay, because I could just put more hours into it and the work would eventually get done. Now that I am working as a hobbyist and I have a full-time other job, I want to make the most of the 1 or 2 hours that I might have a day to work on my project. And so those 1 or 2 hours have to be the most productive. I've got to be on fire. I can't be just kind of twiddling my thumbs and getting hung up on one sentence. I've got to be typing up a storm. And I don't have a gun to my head saying you have to type this many words per minute. I'm not that level of stress. Some days it doesn't happen and I only crank out a few paragraphs, and that's fine. If I know how I generally work optimally, then there's a better chance that I'll make good use of that time. I will be able to make the best of my time. So the way that I can produce these games in a way that, to me, makes them a tangible reality as opposed to a never-ending pipe dream, is to delegate my work depending on my moods. And I've talked about this in previous videos as well, as certain tasks requiring more creative problem solving than others, requiring more focus or concentration than others. So drawing is something a skill that I've spent a lot of time honing over the years, so I can pretty much do that more on autopilot, where it's a good task to do when I feel like decompressing, to like listening to some podcast or chatting with some friends. Like I can multitask somewhat when I'm doing it. My brain can be engaged in something else while I draw, like if I was knitting or like painting a wall or something. I mean, sometimes like animating takes more focus than that, but I can still generally like hold a conversation and like enjoy somebody else's company while I'm drawing, as opposed to when I'm writing. I really can't be engaged with anything else. Like I can barely even listen to music, and if I do listen to music, it has to be instrumental. Like it can't have any lyrics, because I have to be able to hear the voice of the character in my head. And if I have constant interruptions when I'm writing, that also makes it difficult. Because I start to lose my place and I have to keep restarting. So if I have an hour of uninterrupted time, or mostly uninterrupted time, then that's really good, and I can probably crank out a pretty decent amount of work just within that one focused time frame. And then I can spend a lot of time like prepping for it in my mind. So I'm like walking the dog, doing laundry, washing dishes. I can kind of be thinking about the problems that I have to solve with writing, because again, I don't have like a formal, really tight outline to follow. So this morning I was having one of those moments because I was getting ready to release the Chapter 4 update. And there was something that was kind of bothering me a little bit in the back of my head, but I just kind of kept writing past it. And that was, originally Allele was going to be about a 4 or 5 chapter short story. And right now I think it's going to be more in line with my other kind of works that tend to be more double or triple the size that it is right now. So originally I was trying to push the events to move a little bit more faster than I normally would. And one of the ways that I was having the new characters be introduced was the attack on the castle. So I had a vague idea of why there was attack on the castle, but I hadn't really worked out the details of the world's politics, because in my mind that wasn't an important factor to introducing these characters, getting a little bit into their arcs, and then like being done, because it was going to be shorter than my other works. Well, when I started exploring these characters more, I started getting more into it, and now that this story is going to be a little bit longer than I originally planned, I had to really go back and think about what exactly was happening during the attack on the castle, other than using it as a convenient tool to introduce characters. So when I was laying in bed and petting my cat, these are the things I was thinking about. I was thinking about all the circumstances in the world that were going on, and what the motivations would be behind the people who would be behind that coordinated attack on the castle, and how that would affect how Isaac and Simon would be reacting to that situation. And when I realized those motivations, I didn't immediately go in there and be like, well, let me explain all the different politics behind this attack in some kind of info dump. I just looked back at the script and I changed about like maybe 5 sentences where I realized that the characters' words didn't really match with what I had figured out in my story. And so I think that's the difference behind having a developed world that has logical consistency, that you're not asking your reader to extend their disbelief too far, that the characters are no longer empathetic, or that the situation just becomes too ridiculous to try to follow. You don't have to go in there and give all the nitty-gritty details, because it's probably going to be too much. But if you know them for yourself, then keeping that in mind every time you write dialogue or have the characters act or react. You don't have to explain every single detail of why they're doing what they do, because hopefully over the course of the story the player will be able to figure that out on their own. But it's so important as a creator for you to have those details figured out, even if it's only in that little spot in your mind. So I don't know if that's going to be helpful to anybody who's working on their projects or if they're writing. I don't know that I've met a lot of other by-the-pants writers like myself as far as in the visual novel sphere, because I do think that a lot of visual novels are still kind of created in a more task delegated way, like this person writes, this person draws, this person programs, which is totally fine. But as somebody who's always worked more like I am a jack of all trades, it's helpful for me to work in this manner. And I hope that maybe that little bit of insight might have helped somebody else out there. All right. As always, don't forget to enjoy the process, and I hope you have a good week. Everybody, take care. Bye now.